My name is Ash. I work for the association. I'm the external VP for External Relations, a former CFO, and it is really a delight to join you all today. I would like to introduce you to the panelists first off before we get things going. I'm really fortunate to have this panel, a really experienced panel, and the topic of disruption and how businesses are being disrupted and how finance is being disrupted as a part of that is close to all of our hearts. But these people have been dealing with disruption for the last 10 years plus. Carol, why don't you start? Introduce yourselves, just tell the audience what you do and the role you've played in the finance transformation. You actually lead business transformation for EY, and why don't you start off?
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's good to be here. I'm Carol Calandra. I'm a partner at EY. I am a CFO in finance, and we have a global outreach. So I'm responsible on my day job for making sure our client servers, so those that serve our external clients, have what they need from a finance perspective. We're going through quite a massive change, putting in a new system, end-to-end seamless integrated system. So we're disrupting ourselves, and we're moving people along the journey. In addition, we've been preparing for the future, if you will, in this disruption. So I lead, as Ash said, the path to getting our folks, our finance folks around the globe, up the scale to trusted business advisor status from the history reporting and more of the partnership. So glad to be here.
Thank you.
I'm Chris Kite. I work at Oracle. I'm actually the business partner for the North America Tech Division. The North America Tech Division is going through a huge transformation as we move from an on-prem business model to cloud. And we are focused on 3 different cloud areas: software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. In addition, I lead a team of 70 individuals worldwide, and we're also adapting and changing as we want to raise the not only discipline of finance at Oracle, but really be that co-pilot to the business. And in many ways, our staff is trained up, but we want to take them to the next level as we're seeing a lot of not only new technologies to support our business model, but certainly the changing role of finance as we need to be more agile and, in many cases, flexible in how we're not only partnering with the business, but how we're partnering within and among ourselves.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here. My name is John Mahal. I am a partner in the New York office of KPMG. I lead our financial management consulting practice nationally. We have about 500 people that are helping CFOs improve their organizations, processes, and systems. I've been doing this for 25 plus years in across sectors, mature clients, immature clients, end-to-end, starting from strategy, business case, straight through implementation, multi-year projects, 2-month projects. So that's me just in delivery, and then we have a whole practice that I oversee on this. And so we're seeing a lot of change out there and a lot of interest in change, and because the speed and the magnitude of the changes that are happening right now. Our clients are like, of course, each of you, they read the Wall Street Journal and the Harvard Business Review. They're trying to piece it all together, and how do I form an agenda around this? So That's what we're helping them with.
Thank you, John. So really, we do want to explore what the CFO's agenda for disruption is today. It needs to be on our agenda. It needs to be on our personal agendas, but also us as leaders and us as individuals. So in terms of the disruption, what we are seeing is we're at crossroads. We're at a crossroads today. The level of change and the magnitude of change, as you said, John, this is unprecedented. We haven't seen this level of change that is impacting the business as such. So it's a disruption to the business. Business models are being disrupted, and finance is being disrupted as a part of that disruption. So if you look at the top 2 boxes, the top 2 boxes are around the business guidance, and digital and data is what is fundamentally changing the way business is conducted, the way products and services are consumed. So businesses are being disrupted because of digital and data. the way products are being delivered, the way products are being consumed, the way services are being delivered and consumed has changed. And a part of that change is, the move, for example, Chris talked about from on-prem to cloud, moving from CapEx to OpEx. Everything is being disrupted in the finance world as well. So how are we supposed to be responding to those changes? And the role of the CFO in the Office of Finance is under tremendous pressure. And there is currently a role stretch, and the role of finance has continued to stretch more into operations, getting more into the details of operations. Business is pulling them towards being more operational, but also becoming more strategic. And it's the strategy in terms of the changing business models. How does the organization respond to that strategy? They need more and more help from the CFO and the Office of the CFO. But the two challenges you see on this slide is around capability. It's around skills and competencies and the ability of finance to actually deliver what the business needs. So the crossroads I was talking about, there's two hypotheses. The role of finance will either become limited to governance, which is a very important part. But what about business guidance? So if you look at the two pillars of what finance does, governance and guidance, governance will continue to, as you can see here, risk and uncertainty and stakeholder scrutiny and regulation. So the top two boxes are really about business guidance. The bottom two boxes there are about business governance. So we've always established ourselves really well at the governance piece, right? But what is changing now is this is unprecedented, and I meet a lot of CFOs and a lot of individuals who really are questioning the change and not responding at the level they should. So Carol, why is this change different? What is different about what we're seeing now?
Well, I think what's different is it's the pace is
right.
just, really exacerbated. I think we've always seen things change. Look back to the Industrial Revolution, right? We thought, machines, there'll be no jobs. They were just different jobs. But the cycle time is much, much smaller and shorter than it's ever been. And we need to disrupt ourselves. And you see the leading companies are the ones that disrupt themselves. And that's what we're doing at EY, trying to disrupt ourselves so nobody else disrupts us, or we're prepared for that disruption. And you see clients do it. We were talking earlier, the taxi cab is, my favorite example, right? So years ago, the medallions were worth $1 million. Now it's, $100,000? Who knew Uber was going to come in? And it came in really quickly, right? And now Uber's almost on the way out, right? And we've got driverless cars. You look at the CVS and Aetna and all that, who would have thought that companies would come together the way they're coming together? Amazon, the retailers that are just a dime a dozen on the street. You've got to disrupt yourselves. And we in finance have to disrupt ourselves. We can't be the scorecard keepers of the past.
Right.
It's interesting what happened yesterday, but it was yesterday, and I can't react to it. I need to think about what's coming and bring those insights so that in the future I can bring that perspective to the operations, to the firm leadership, et cetera, and make a difference in the direction as opposed to report the past.
Right. John, anything to add there?
I would wholeheartedly agree with all of that. In fact, I would say that some of the things that will not change in terms of the responsibility of finance will be, of course, the fiduciary responsibilities around control, around proper accounting and accounting estimates, risk management, general governance. Even as those things become more automated, the nature of the skill set over that domain will increase. So it'll become a more consultative skill set, more like some strategic questions around where the risks are in the business and what we ought to be looking at, right, as you have continuous monitoring and working. So I think what you'll see is the auditor and the CFO, just from a control standpoint, will be elevated in terms of the nature of the skill required. Now, today, what we're seeing is the speed of change is requiring a certain agility and speed to adjust to that. Not just because the business model itself is changing, new products, services, channels, but the speed of change. Is the business going up, down, sideways, and the forecasting and prediction around that is becoming more difficult.
Right.
And so those are the types of changes that our clients are facing today. And they also are very aware of new technologies, and they need, or at least want, to understand the impact of those technologies. And I'll give just blockchain. I'm sure everybody in this room is aware of blockchain, and they're thinking, well, what impact is that going to have on my business and my finance function, right? Big issue. And, we're in early days, but now's the time to think about it, right? So these are the conversations we're having with our clients.
So the change we're talking about, and perhaps you can add to this, Chris, in terms of extreme automation.
Yeah.
Technology is just automating unprecedented. I mean, we've seen automation in manufacturing. We've seen automation in other parts of production, et cetera. But now, finance and accounting. You, with the tech company you are, is this like a spreadsheet revolution when spreadsheets came 20 years ago, and it just revolutionized the way we did accounting?
Yes.
Right?
How many people still use spreadsheets? Be honest.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I don't think we'll ever get away from spreadsheets, even though I think everybody would like to say that. I want to touch upon what John said and then absolutely answer Ash. I think if you were to look at a from to just in the area of risk management, and perhaps my time at the Federal Reserve Bank and having been part of an institution where a third of its responsibility is supervision and regulation, is the from to is now, from a risk management perspective, it used to be, are we adhering to regulatory, concerns? Are we, in many cases, looking at Dodd-Frank and implementing it? If you just look at some of the new accounting standards, 606 in revenue recognition. I would tell you or challenge us as finance professionals that the risk management, if you really look at risk management, it's no longer just focused on regulatory adherence and being able to comply. Risk is also about opportunity. It's as much about danger as it is about opportunity. Are we, as an organization, taking enough risk? Is one of our greatest risks the fact that we may be too risk adverse? And therefore, we're missing either a market inflection, a market trend. We don't believe that driverless cars can really become a reality. So I would say risk management is even changing as we look forward. It has to be as much about growth and opportunity, and are we taking enough risk versus perhaps where we came from after the financial crisis of being very risk adverse, very compliance driven, almost to the point where the risk professional was, perhaps even a higher number of people than the people in finance. So that's just a piece on risk that I really feel strongly about. And if I was talking to a board tomorrow, I would say, are you taking enough risk? How do you know that? How are you quantifying that? How are you measuring your risk profile? Because I guarantee you your competitors are having those conversations. In terms of technology, I think that Carol really touched upon it. As we look at velocity, let's look at data. So we know big data, but what is big data? We're getting data faster than we have ever gotten it before, so the velocity is there. The volume, more data than I think any of us is willing to even be able to fully understand in our organizations, both inside and outside, as we look at alliances and channels and partners and third parties that we deal with who are also creating volumes of data. If we look at the variety of data, oftentimes, we're getting it through voice response units. We're getting it through the web. We're getting it through a field. We're getting it through inside sales. We're getting it in so many different varieties or variations. How are we able to consume it, digest it, aggregate it, give it meaning, and then go tell a business partner what we're seeing? Mm-hmm. In many cases, even if we can arm ourselves with that view, can we articulate it? And not only can we articulate it to our stakeholders, both primary and secondary, but can we get action against it? So even if we can get to the conversation with the data, using the insights, the foresights, whatever we want to call it in today's world, variety, velocity, volume, and in many cases, can we articulate that view in a way that others can consume, and in many cases influence them? So I would say, yes, the technology is helpful, but some of the soft skills are probably as important. And we can get into cloud and security and all those other things. But I would say that this area of data and big data and the analytical, before we would call them financial analysts. Now, do we call them data scientists? Do we actually need some data scientists in our finance profession as much as we need the financial analyst? Maybe something provocative for us to think about.
Right. That does take us to a good point in terms of trying to discuss talent development, talent management. I've got a slide up for the last 5 minutes or so from KPMG where the CEOs said the CFO really needs to focus on talent development. Skills of the future are absolutely critical. But what are those skills of the future? And this is a good time, data scientists, are we trying to make future accountants data scientists and data engineers? Or do they need to be capable of understanding what data scientists and data engineers do and be the interface between the business and the guys in the back in the white coats, right? So it's a good point to discuss maybe at this point as to what are those types of skills. And John, you touched upon them. A lot of those skills I call, the term that's coming around is intangible skills. They're almost difficult to define, difficult to develop, difficult to identify. Can we talk about that? Because it's really relevant to us. What are the skills? I mean, are they data skills? Are they technology?
Yeah, I think there's not a... some of this depends on the role that finance plays in data and analytics in a company. And there is not yet a prevailing point of view out that I'm aware of, and talking to dozens of clients, and my partner's talking to dozens of clients. In fact, we have an article, an advertorial, in a recent Harvard Business Review on this, that there's not one model that suggests that the CFO must, or his organization or her organization must be involved in or own all of data and analytics, but there is a point of view that says they have to be a steward of it, because the CFO has a unique role, and this only belongs to finance, and it's a permission thing, and it should be a capability thing, that the integration and understanding of strategy, the strategy of the company, where it's going, translating that to financial outcomes and targets, and then dovetailing the operational metrics and data so they actually connect properly to financial outcomes. There is the only role. It's almost like you cannot avoid it. You're abdicating it. This is a call to action to make sure whatever role you can get in your organization around that you're taking it. Now, some organizations, depending on the capability of the incumbent, how the organization's structured, where the infrastructure reports, et cetera, you're going to have different models in terms of ownership of the different pieces of data and analytics. So, again, there's no one prevailing model. But the skill sets are going to evolve over time. And I think that the just on the skill set issue, not just the ownership issue, will evolve, and the finance function will have to go there. It won't be optional. The finance function will go there, but our job today is to prepare the finance function to get there, right? The future generations of finance. And so these are our responsibilities, right? What's the type of training? What's the type of skill set? How do we develop people, right? That's what we're worried about. Talent management is probably the single most important thing in our business. And if it's not our business, it should be everybody's business as well.
Yeah. Carol, we talked about the skills and competencies that help move, from the assembling of the information, the analysis of the information. That is being automated. A lot of that will be done for you. But then you talked about actually developing solutions and then deploying those solutions. What skills and competencies do you think are required to move and to shift from the assembly to actually the deployment?
Yeah, so great relationship management skills.
Right.
You could have the greatest idea. If you can't communicate it and you can't get somebody to buy it, then it sits on the shelf. So that's really key. I always say you've got to listen. You have to understand the problem. So you have to be extremely curious and inquisitive. Why? 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 So I always talk to our advisors and say, if you give an answer, it's probably the wrong answer. Ask a question to make sure you're answering the right issue. And then really challenge. I think part of our roles are really to be stewards, right? And to guide the organization, as John says, towards that strategy. So challenge, push back. Do the stakeholder management. Understand, here's a burning platform. Test it. Review it. So all those skill sets of relationship management, I think I take for granted that you have the technical skills, right? That you can do all that stuff. And you're right. If all you're doing is churning out spreadsheets and reports, we have computers that can do that, right? And robotics and all that stuff. And if all you're doing is analyzing the data, well, we're going to have analytics that'll be here, pop it out, here's the answer. But how do we fix the problem, right? That's where you need to convince somebody that there's a problem, show them the data, show them the insights, and bring them along the journey so I can understand why we're moving more towards operations, because it's not just here's the problem, somebody else go fix it. We are in a perfect seat to help identify the problem and work on the solution and guide people along the way. But you got to do that with great stakeholder management, relationship skills, and knowing your thing.
And to talk about some of these skills specifically, what the association has done is launch the CGMA program, the Chartered Global Management Accounting program. It really does focus on building those, basic building blocks of business relation skills, communication skills, collaboration skills, in the context of business, right? So you have to do it in. It's not outside of send somebody off on a Toastmasters course so that they can speak well. That's not the point. Yeah. The point really is to be able to communicate in the context of business. So the solution to those creating those competencies are really hard, because these cannot be taught in a classroom. These cannot be taught in the colleges. A lot of this is gained experientially. But then you have to be exposed to the fundamental concepts of communication, of motivation, of leading change, leading teams, being a change agent. And these type of skills are being baked into the CGMA program. But it'd be really interesting to see, how do you guys approach, and how should one be approaching these type of skills, which are intangible skills? How do you build these skills into the millennials who are on your teams and the future, where you don't really, we cut our teeth coming through the transactional side of the business and moved on to senior roles. But now the transactional side is being automated, and you'll have the intake at a much higher level, and they don't have exposure to that level of insight in the business. So how are you addressing those shifts? How are you equipping people to come in and start partnering? Any thoughts, John?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts. There's two primary threads in my thought right now on this. One is who self-selects into accounting today, and what is their nature, right? And are we, the people who are self-selecting in their nature, do they have the natures that we want in the future? Comfort with ambiguity, flexibility, ability to adapt quickly, less rule-oriented. Those are the, and then maybe a little, and I'm a little introverted myself, but maybe a little less introverted, right? So that, and I think we also have to say there's not one personality that makes a good business partner. I think, we have to tell people that they've got to be themselves, right? It's more a sort of guidance, because any personality, as long as it's appropriately authentic and appropriately respectful, can work, right? And everybody understands that intuitively, but we've got to let our people be themselves, right? So even though these are slightly different skill sets than we've demanded, I think we've got to recognize that as well.
You guys have done really well in terms of, churning out trusted business advisors. And you've used the CGMA program as well.
Right,
so.
yeah, no, I think the CGMA program is a great base. And it's recognized, so people feel good about it, right? So there's a badge, if you will. But it is about experiential development and giving people that comfort that they're going to fail. It's okay. No great leader has ever hit the ball out of the park every single time. That's how you learn, right? So giving that permission, working with them, mentoring them, giving programs for developmental opportunities, and then experiential opportunities within that either unit or cross units, whatever. That's really how you develop and grow people. And then partnering with the business, because we can't do it alone as finance. So we've got to get our business leaders and key stakeholders to say, here's a rising star. I'm going to put them working with you. Help me, because I can't do it alone, they can't do it alone. Partner with me to make it happen. And the insights, and when people really take a shining to somebody, they just soar, right? And then they start paying it back, as I like to say, or paying it forward. So really, it's all our collective responsibilities working together to get people up the path. And you can have lots of programs, and we do, and they've been great, and CGMA is one of them. And the folks that have gone through it have said, wow, this is fabulous. And you can see their career start to take a different trajectory because they start to challenge things that they wouldn't have challenged before, right? But it takes a village, if you will.
Yeah. And Chris, you went through a significant transformation, and there's a related question to this in terms of talent. Is it better to develop talent within or hire from the outside? Mm-hmm. And the answer could be both. But, you were talking about bringing somebody in who changed the way you were looking at your business when you moved to the cloud.
Yeah. I think it depends. Back to bringing them in from the outside or develop them within. Plans don't make things happen, people do. So at the end of the day, whether you have a robot, whether you have a plan, whatever, you need the people who are going to still implement and ignite things. I think, number one, depending upon the business model and what you're trying to change, I don't think it can all be done from within and retraining. Now, it depends how transformational, how disruptive, and also how much time you have to get to the outcome that they're expecting you within a business. Back to the velocity, we don't have a lot of time these days in terms of our time horizons, where we used to do 3 to 5 year plans. I'd say anything over 24 months. I'm glad you have the visibility, because I think it's far more uncertain once you get past that time horizon. 3 things we did. Number one, absolutely for cloud, it's hard to teach cloud to individuals because they just don't know what they don't know. So we absolutely had to bring in individuals from what we viewed, especially because Oracle was a fast follower, so fast follower in the market, we were able to say, who are the market leaders? And how do we go and get at least 1 or 2 from the market leaders who can come in and help train our team? And it also was symbolic, and there was kind of a psyche around the fact that somebody from a leader would come and work with us. Now, you might have to pay a premium, you might have to do a little bit more recruiting, whatever, but don't underestimate the symbolic nature of somebody from Amazon coming to Oracle and into the finance organization, because it kind of raises everybody's morale and gets them excited. And if you hire the right individual, they're not going to come in pompous or arrogant. They're going to come in ready to help train others. They're going to feel like, wow, I get to take what I learned at my previous company and actually help this company get where they need to get or go. So that was 1. 2, I'll surprise you. I looked at the backgrounds of every single person. Now my team isn't that big, it's 70 people, but it's the first thing I did. Luckily, I worked for organizations in the past that really teach you how to get in, get going, and start analyzing your own team. I noticed we had a lot of accounting degrees. I actually searched for people who had econ and other undergraduate degrees, because in many cases I wanted that systemic critical thinking. And back to what John said, the dealing with ambiguity. So if you look at economics, right, why do we have so many economists? Because they never agree. But they can definitely deal with uncertainty. They actually love it. They love running scenarios. They're good at running scenarios. The biggest thing is you got to help them stop running at some point in time and actually get to implementation. I also feel that there is a discipline, I'll be a little biased here, maybe because I have an undergraduate degree in ops research. I still think there are some degrees that are very process-oriented, and don't underestimate the need for creativity within the finance organization. And the creativity, I'll surprise you, not only process creativity and process automation, but the way we display data. When I was looking and came into the organization and I saw how we were displaying the data, it was like great for another analyst, not good for an SVP, an EVP, or even, I can say this, I know I'm on tape, Mark Hurd, we love you, you are so operationally oriented, but still, how can you show the math in a way that's not only interesting, but people can absorb it and understand it almost themselves? So you have to do little talking, and the math and really the way you've aggregated and synthesized the information makes it easy for them to see that picture.
Yeah, and Carol, you've been implementing change across your finance organization, across the world, and you had a very mature team. So what are the things that you deployed to help, the internal team to develop? And yes, bringing fresh blood in is important at the appropriate time and level and reason, but things that you did that really moved your experienced people.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One, we did bring in fresh blood. So we have a whole population of really great analytical, strategic thinkers in our client-serving populations that maybe don't want to serve clients externally anymore. So we've brought them in, and they have a whole different appreciation for our business, so that helps some of our folks that aren't maybe as close to it. Two, we talked a lot about the business. Do we understand the business? Do you understand what it means to audit? Do you understand what it means to serve an advisory client and what those those services that we provide are? To get them closer to that. We also offered them CGMA certification, which helped, and we had people around the globe take us up on that. We talked a lot about the competencies of a trusted business advisor, which we call them trusted business advisors, same thing as CGMA framework. The reality is you need some competencies to be able to get up that path. And what we found was many of our people that were in their roles for a long time didn't really understand, despite all the talk, what trusted business advisor really meant. So we had face-to-face and virtual workshops, cross-function, to talk about trusted business advisors. And then we planted people that we knew were trusted business advisors to share their stories. And all of a sudden you had the ahas going. Oh, I didn't realize that was it. I do that, or I can do that, or help me do that, or can I go to one of your meetings and see you do that? So it was a lot of aha. We keep progressing that so that we open the conversation, make it a safe space, so that those that are really great and great at what they do and want to move up the curve to trusted business advisor have a path and they feel it's safe to do so.
Right.
We also realize not everybody's going to make it, right? So part of my personal goal was to send the message and give people a lot of time. We started probably 5 years ago, so that by the time we're really ready to say we need only trusted business advisor folks, we've had enough people that have been able to get up, and it's been heartwarming to see these people rise to that challenge. And those that decide they want to opt out, that's their choice. They want to do that.
So we're really addressing the question, do you see these individuals changing and taking on these skill sets, adapting? So yes and no, some of them do, some of them don't.
Most of them did. Most of them did.
Right. John, any thoughts on what do you do in your team to?
Well, I think the important takeaway for me from what I see at our clients, what I'm hearing here, is that there's got to be some degree of structure around talent management. It's not a matter of, otherwise you're operating on hope.
Right.
Boy, I hope that person hires the right people. Boy, I hope that they're training the right people. And the number of clients that I have that their talent management strategy is hope is extraordinary. So it's totally a hope-based thing, right? So there's no program or even thought, right? So that, not to get into the details of what a program would look like, but I think, what I hear Carol explaining is, there's some structure to what we're doing here, right? Secondly, the nature of the skill sets, the project and process management, I think that will come over time. I think it will have to come. I think there'll be professionalization around those roles. It's a hobby now. That's the problem at most of our clients. And even if our biggest clients, process and project management, are hobbies, but as the world changes and things become more automated, process understanding will. I would submit, and this is something that in order to really understand internal controls, you need to understand processes, right? So the fact that we have finance people that don't understand processes is a red flag,
absolutely,
right? That maybe you can't understand controls, right? So one of the reasons why we do a lot of business and EY does a lot of business is because those skills are far from abundant in our clients. Project management and process management, right? And I think our clients are coming from different places. We have very mature clients. I'll just place GE as an example of a mature client, just because they're always the easy pickings for that sort of thing, right? But they have more process orientation, project management skills. They are professionalizing that. The less mature clients, they're the traditional, bean counters. It's, the mushroom management style. And so we, are operating with all kinds of people. And I think you need to take a note as to where your organization is in that maturity curve. Is it even realistic to, develop a process management professional, tomorrow? So that has to factor into the plan, where I am today and where I need to get to by when, into the structured model and plan.
How much time does one dedicate to professional development in terms of, is it a part of their job? Do they do it outside of their jobs? When do they do it?
You're talking about as a leader or individual?
Individuals. How do you allow individuals time within their workspace? Do they need to do it on their own? And do you even support professional development? I know you do. I know KPMG does. It'd be interesting to hear what Oracle. Consulting companies traditionally will. That is absolutely essential.
Well, there's formal and informal training,
right,
and I think that's I think, and there are career experiences. Right, and maybe that's a way of saying you need this career experience described in such a way in order to advance. And so that would be the best way,
right.
In addition to the formal training. I think the formal training provides you with the frameworks, the thoughts, the ideas, the logic around applying these things. But the experiential, day-to-day, that has to be structured as well.
Probably what we believe in is rotations back to the GE model, so that accounting is learning more about FP&A. FP&A is learning more about tax and treasury, because the implications and the interdependencies are very great. So in many cases, we hold joint meetings. We also have formal rotation programs. I think the role of the finance professional, especially at a more senior level, is to be the orchestrator or the facilitator, working horizontally with our peers in HR, in IT, in operations, even in marketing and in business strategy and development. One of the things that we do is we have what's known as the core team at Oracle, and that multidisciplinary team, it's not a committee, they meet because that's what our business partners are expecting from us. They're expecting us to work as a cross-functional support team to enable the business. And HR sees finance through a different prism. IT sees finance through a different prism, and we also see them. So the opportunity that we have to share what we're seeing, because we each as disciplines see the organization horizontally, I think is also a way not only for us to develop ourselves, because it's hard for us to lead others if we're not developing and we're not evolving, especially in a transformation. Nobody has the right answer. We just want the optimal one. So I really like the comment. I think in addition to having the formal programs, the structured programs, we're looking at the CGMA too.
Just to follow on really quickly to that, at what level within the organization do you prioritize that cross-functional interaction?
Yeah.
Is that only sort of at a higher level, or is that the entire stack?
It's a really good question. It starts at my level. Like, I meet with my peers because I support an executive vice president, who reports to the CEO. And he's expecting me to help lasso kind of that core team, not a derogatory term, just to be the facilitator, do the one who sets up the meetings, get that ignited, and get it ongoing and sustainable. What I think is important is the people underneath us see that. And so they see that we work in partnership, that we are collaborating, that we're not throwing each other to the bus or blaming, the fact that we did a reorganization and HR didn't set up the R codes fast enough. Well, no, it's us too, right? We feel accountable if those R codes aren't set up. It's not HR that's only accountable. We as a support team feel accountable. I think that when they see that kind of leadership in action, I think it sets a tone for then how we expect them to work at their level.
Yeah, it's top down, certainly, but it has to be bottom up as well. In my old business, we used to send the analysts out to be actually a part of the team. So the customer services analyst will actually be sitting where the call center was rather than in the head office. And it just changed the way, the understanding of the processes in a way which we never understood before, and really helped us understand the underlying drivers, understand how customer services operates, and how we can help them. So I think it has to be both. Send the people out to be connected, embed them into the particular functions, and you'll find cross-functional collaboration happening more.
I think there's a lens or a paradigm that helps with that at the lower levels, is to manage your processes, what I'll call end-to-end, independent of function. And because if you're managing accounts receivable, to really understand the upstream policies and processes and people, and then build the relationships with those folks. So even at the more junior clerical levels, that stuff. If you're managing and have a tone at the top that's end to end.
Just collaboration.
Yes.
We expect you to work kind of collaboratively. It's almost an expectation set from the top.
One of the things we don't really do well is make a business case for ourselves, right? We prepare business cases for the rest of the business, supporting investment, et cetera. But what about ourselves, right? The CFO goes to the CEO saying, hey, I need new talent. I need to bring in some new people. I need some programs. I need to spend X amount of money. And the CEO says, well, you're going to spend all this money, and what happens if they leave, right? And the CFO says, well, let's say we don't spend any of this money, and what if they all stay, right? So, we have to be able to make the case for training and development. And I know for you guys, it's a done deal. It's no one questions the spend on talent.
Not necessarily true.
Well, that's true. If I'm talking to my boss,
I know of
sometimes
companies where it is a struggle. It is a real struggle. But anyway.
But I think you have to look at opportunities. You're the experts, right? We have 250,000 client servers around the globe. They're ultimately going to use this system. And they're going to struggle, right? Because it's not what they do every day. You are the experts. Talk to your peers around the globe, next door to you, wherever they might sit. Don't reinvent the wheel. And I think that's part of what we like to do in finance sometimes is all right, we've got a problem, let's go solve the problem. Pick your head up. Talk to people, figure out who has had that problem, do you really have the right problem identified, how to solve it collaboratively, and then get leading practices in there to solve it. The cycle time reduces, and you've got a proven product that you can tweak and make a little better, as opposed to a brand new thing that was a great idea but wasn't as good as somebody else did, and you didn't even take the opportunity to do it. So opportunities are created sometimes, and you don't realize what they are, but you got to take advantage of those opportunities.
Right. Okay, so I'll bring this to a landing. Last opportunity for having your say. Okay, two propositions. One, the role of finance is going to be reduced just only to governance, or will finance adapt and adopt and become the business partner we've always positioned ourselves to be?
It's not going to happen that way. Our finance people will always, have first and foremost that governance role. That's just table stakes.
Right.
And I believe that they'll get there over time. I think, and when I talk about the broad cross-business community, it's individual businesses, I think, that can accelerate or decelerate, their speed in this future skill set. And I am not trying to make this simple, because there are so many variables here that at play. So my suggestion would be recognize that there's speed. You've got to have an agile, infrastructure and team, and that you cannot be a boat anchor on your business, right? And if you are a boat anchor, you got to say something, right? And so, because things are happening so fast, right? That would be my suggestion.
Thank you. Chris?
I would definitely say business partner, co-pilot to the business. I feel not only is the role of finance, if we don't perform, we feel accountable. So get in, get going, and get to the outcome that not only the business can get to, but in many cases you can be the catalyst for the business realizing what you can see because you're the scout for them in many ways. I think governance is table stakes. I think you have to have good governance. But I also feel you can be that strong business partner, that strategist, that scout, and actually help the business because in many cases that's what we're here for.
I would agree. I think that's what we all want to do, right? Mm-hmm. And so we talk to people, but it is a scary world to do that. Some people feel very safe behind their computer, right? Well, you need to self-assess and get to the next level because that's where the value is. And we all want to feel good about adding value and making a difference in our business. And the reality is we've got table stakes to deal with, but then there's the value, and that's where the value is.
Right. And I'll just say yes to it as well. Yes, we will continue to be the business partners, but I think the slide that's been up for most of the panel, it is about talent management. It is about developing the right talent, bringing in the right talent, having the right competencies. If you don't do that, we are toast. Thanks very much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.